paie comme jamais, ça paie comme jamais des jamais, ça paie comme jamais, jamais, ça paie comme jamais, ça paie comme jamais des jamais, ça paie comme jamais.
On casse ta porte, c'est la Gestapo, je vais te retrouver.
Can everyone hear me? Perfect. All right, well, thank you all for coming out tonight. I know it's really freezing cold outside, there's snow, so it's hard for people to like trek through to get here, but we are hopeful. Just so you all have an idea, kind of the concept behind this is that, you know, part of Black History Month, we want to put on an event kind of just to kind of give some kind of concepts and ideas about what are things happening on the African continent, as well as, you know, what is that role as an African to the history of Black history, as well as just here on our campus. So I guess kind of a question to the audience, what do you know about the continent? Like this, yell any like crazy facts that you could tell me about the continent. Anything.
It's big.
It's big, all right.
Indigenous knowledge systems.
All right.
Colonialism.
Okay. Anything else you can think of? Well, that's all right. So, with that, I'm going to first just kind of give you some knowledge about some of the countries that our panelists have come from, just so you can have a little bit more ideas. My hope is that after you leave here, you can at least say, when I ask that question again, you're like, oh, I know this country, I know a little bit about that. So the first country I want to talk about is the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Some fun facts about it is that it is the most populated country on the continent with about over 170 million people. The main religion is Islam and Christianity. Over 250 different ethnic groups, but the dominant ones are Igbo, Yoruba, and Hausa. It is home of Nollywood, so if you know one of the biggest film industries, it's the second biggest in the world over Bollywood, which is located in Southeast Asia. And then the third mainland bridge, which is located in Lagos State, is the longest bridge on the continent. Not that it spans the continent, but it's one of the longest bridges on the continent. Next, we have the wonderful land of Ethiopia. I don't know why I said it weird like that. Ethiopia. It's home of the early humans. So one of our oldest fossils date back to 3.2 million years ago. It is the birthplace of coffee. So for all you coffee drinkers and you love coffee, you need to go to Ethiopia and try the coffee because that is the homeland of it. The Nile River has two sources, which one of it is in Ethiopia. Also, Ethiopian Airways, or airlines, is one of the first African airlines that currently serves 113 passenger destinations. And then Ethiopian flies also to the most destinations on the African continent. So really big for that country and for the airlines. And it's the only country, one of the only countries that have never been colonized. So then we got good old Egypt. So from 300 BC to 1953, Egypt had been under foreign rule. Approximately 99% of the population lives on 5.5% of the land. So think about all that land. 90% live on 5.5% of the actual land of the country. In the border of Egypt and Sudan, there's about 795 square feet or miles of land that's unclaimed by neither countries. The Statue of Liberty was originally intended for Egypt, which is cool. And then no Egyptian president has left office without being arrested or dying until now. So, interesting. Next, we have Ivory Coast. It is the world's leading producer of cocoa beans. So, if you like chocolate, this is where you need to go to get that real rich chocolate. The country was named Ivory Coast due to the large amount of ivory being traded in the area. The official language Ivory Coast is French, but there are over about 70 other languages spoken in the country. And then the football team has been in the World Cup the last 3 times and also won the 2015 African Cup of Nations against Ghana. So that's a really big deal. On the continent in general, football, as in soccer, is a big sport, and so winning those is like the US's Super Bowl. So then next, I'm going to have the panelists kind of introduce themselves, and we'll go from there. Anyone can start.
I can start. So I'm Mackie. I'm from Egypt. I'm a sophomore right now, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Hi, my name is Geneva Balo, and I'm from Cote d'Ivoire.
Hi everyone, my name is Salome Rose and I'm originally from Ethiopia.
I'm Titi Fomada, originally from Nigeria.
My name is Kanaki Delta. I'm from Ivory Coast. I'm a French professor here at UMC. And I'm very happy to share my knowledge about Ivory Coast with you tonight.
You're allowed to speak French.
Okay, Geneva is from Ivory Coast, so correct me if I'm wrong about my country. Ivory Coast.
Thank you.
And we go to practice French. And after that, I'm pretty sure you're going to take a French class with me next semester. It's a requirement.
All right, so the first question, we can go in any order, is kind of what has been your journey? How did you get here?
So I was born in America, but after being born in America, after I was 1 year old, then I moved back to Ivory Coast with my parents and everybody else for 7 years, and then came right back to America. And ever since then, I've been here. But I go back home every 2 years.
So I was born and raised in Egypt. I still live there, and I stayed there until I was 16. And then once I was 16, I kind of started to think more about my future, and so I applied to boarding school. And that's how I got over to the U.S. And at that time, I think it was 2011. That's when all the revolutions happened back home. So it was kind of like a fitting time to leave. But so I've been going back every summer for Christmases, and my family's all there. So pretty much I've just been going back and forth. But it's kind of how my life's been so far. So.
All right, I'm from Nigeria, as I said. Grew up in Nigeria, had my early education there, and my first bachelor's and master's degree there, and then went to London, did another master's and a PhD. Taught in England, in Nigeria, and a few other places, and now in the US. In the US for going on to 20 years now, and have studied here as well. So I have been in higher education for over 3 decades, and as a student, I too was in boarding school, so I went to a girls' boarding school, and I also was an international student in London, and been here now, taught at Kentucky State, and was an administrator there, and I'm here at HWS in my 5th year. But I feel that one of the most important things about my identity is my family. I have children and grandchildren and lots of friends and sisters and brothers. I feel that I'm just surrounded by an extremely supportive group of people. I was born into that kind of family, and I've raised one, I hope. And so I tend to kind of see wherever I'm located in those terms. And so here at HWS, I kind of feel that the campus community is my family. And believe it or not, I know you're all grown men and women, but I kind of still think of you like, so my kids are a little older than all the students on this campus. And so that's kind of how I see it, and I feel that if you pray for people and think about them all the time, they are your family, and that's kind of how I think about my students here, and faculty and staff and other people.
Kanaki Dauda, I was born in Ivory Coast, and I have to say that my traditional values were shaped by the French culture, the French language, and I was educated in French, French civilization, French literature. At some point of my life, I really wanted to explore new things, and when I was given the opportunity to move from the French culture, the French literature, so I decided to come to Canada, because I didn't know anything about North America. So I went to Canada to do my PhD, French Canadian literature and French Caribbean literature. And after my PhD, I wanted to improve my English. I said, where can I go to improve my English? And I was having some discussion about that with my supervisor. And he said, Kanate, I have a solution to your problems. There is some position here in the US, in Canada, Toronto, and in the US, you have a choice, to go there. And I said, okay, why not? So I decided to apply, and I was given the opportunity to come there for William Smith, and everything went very well. So I was able to improve my English at the same time to improve my professional skill. So after my PhD, I moved here to William Smith, where I've been teaching topics in Francophone cultures, Canadian studies, and Quebec studies and Canadian studies, and I'm also teaching classes on French Caribbean literature. And most of my courses here at Mobile William Smith are dealing with identity issues, memory, identity, immigration, exile. And they have a very strong connection with my own exile from moving from Africa to Canada to the United States. And when I'm talking about exile, I'm talking about exile in terms of geographical exile, but also in terms of being exiled within your own culture. After crossing out this culture, from Africa to Canada to the United States to France, and coming back, going back home, and feeling, experiencing the feeling of estrangement within your own culture, being different from your sister, your brother, your friend. So how traveling so far away from your native land has shaped your own identity. How you became a foreigner in your own identity, you become different. And so those are the kind of topics, also subject matter I'm dealing with in my teaching, my research, and I'd be happy to share my view about that and to hear your viewpoint about your own identity, how your experience of going abroad has shaped your identity, how you're dealing with your feeling of belonging to home at William Smith, from moving home to coming here. So those are some of the topics that I would be very, very happy to share with you and to hear you about that.
So I often hate the question, where are you from? Because my journey, much like the other panelists, is very much, it meandered a lot, right? But I often just say I'm Ethiopian American, or I say I'm originally from Ethiopia because both my parents are Ethiopian and they raised me in the culture, knowing the language, loving the food. But I was born in Virginia in the US, lived in Ivory Coast as well, right? So in many ways that feels like home sometimes, a lot of times. Moved back to the US for a few years, and then moved back to the Ivory Coast, and it is the best country. And then moved to Oman in the Middle East, right? Which is completely different from Cote d'Ivoire and the Ivory Coast. And then completed high school, graduated, and then went on to earn my bachelor's degree at a university in the US. And then stayed, got married, had a child, right? So now this is home. But I love that the question is, what is your journey? Because this, in many ways, this is just one stop in that journey of a global identity for a lot of us.
So, thank you for that. So the next question is, what does it mean to be an African on this campus? And so when you think about your identity, your role, and how you present yourself, what do you think it means?
All right, maybe I'll take that. First of all, like Salome said, I see myself as a transnational citizen. I have lived in so many places and just had different types of experiences. But I feel that the worldview that shapes how I think most is my African identity in terms of social relations. I believe that I belong in all these different communities where I have lived. But I feel that when it comes to how people relate to each other, I think the Africans got it better. When it comes to just interpersonal relationships. So on this campus, what does it mean to be an African? To be honest with you, that's not a question I consciously think about on a daily basis until something happens to bring it to the fore. And usually it's when I encounter people having struggles with their identity in one shape or the other. And I kind of feel think how I can respond to that or be helpful. I have experienced being a minority and being a majority. So I understand the dynamics of being located in any of those spheres. I also understand growing up, going to school, and being in a non-racialized society, and I understand fully being in a racialized society. I feel that I don't see being an African as a disadvantage in any way, in anything, anywhere I've lived in my life. I actually see, I kind of harness the positive that come from that experience. I feel that when I'm in doubt about the way to relate to people or about the way to handle a situation that is human related, I almost automatically fall back to that. That's my default position. It's a position that recognizes that human beings, people mean a lot more than things, and that human beings are not objects or things, and so they are to be respected and to relate to people. And I think that's how I try to come across, whether to students or faculty or whoever I relate to. I feel that in the conversations that are going on, just about how we all live together well with each other, that probably all of us here, and all of you there, all of us have perspectives that are very important. I feel that I have a perspective that is worth sharing. For the reasons that I just said, I have occupied all those locations. And more importantly, I know that when I walk into a room, like all of us, people already make certain judgments and they form some impressions in their brain, and I've become so used now to being the only person that's like my type in most situations where I occupy because of my job and my situation. Even as a student, most times I'll be the only woman, sometimes I'm the only person of color, most times I'm the only international person. So I actually represent many diversities if you're checking the numbers. So I feel that sometimes people expect you to be a representative or an ambassador of what they see as that identity, which is fun, but sometimes it gets really boring to be. So I always turn it around because everybody is interesting. Like, I'm not the only interesting person. Those people asking me are just as interesting. So I do kind of want to hear. So on campus here, I feel comfortable, I feel welcome, but I also recognize the impact of my position. I recognize that I cannot use that as a judgment for everybody, but I don't feel that it's a disadvantage in any direct way. But in indirect ways, when people sort of see you and assume certain things, and they have a list, and you're having a meeting, not just on this campus, you go to conferences, you go to places, you're black, you sound different. People have their ideas of what they think an African person is. And so when they list all these things, and they're having these discussions, first generation, low income, this, that, and they list all, and I'm thinking in my mind, none of that fits me, but it doesn't matter. That's kind of what people who really don't know are assuming that you are. So being the minority in any group does have a little bit of a cultural tax that you pay, a cultural burden, but it's fun. Sorry, that was beyond.
No. Salome?
I think for me, because there are so few Africans on campus, I see it as a sense of responsibility, maybe to educate, right? Because there are so many misperceptions about the continent, or just ignorance, and I don't mean that in a malicious way, just the lack of knowledge, right? In Western societies about the richness of the continent. And so for me, it's about trying to take advantage of opportunities and spaces to promote the continent, right? To educate others about the richness of the continent, the fact that humanity started on the continent, right? To take pride in the fact that that being African has value in the world, right? And that we're not just a continent that is dependent upon the West, right? But that it has been a contributor long before many Western civilizations had existed, and continues to be a force to be reckoned with. And so for me, it's taking pride in that identity and wanting to share that sense of pride with as many, young people, as many people in general as possible.
I agree with Salome, because I was born here and then went back home and then came back. My parents have always told me that I'm African, and just forget about the American side, because she wanted me to maintain and develop my culture and make sure that I still have that identity, because once you come to America, you kind of lose that identity in the sense that because everything is like you're trying to fit in with the Western culture, and even back home they're still trying to fit in with the Western culture. So then my mom's trying to like, okay, we're all African, that's it. But then coming to HWS, I really didn't know anybody who was African except for Josh in the summertime. But then like it's like people don't really talk about Africa in a sense. And like when I start to meet people, I'm like, oh, you're African, and then I get excited because I'm like, oh, I'm not the only African person on this campus. But then it's only that I'm only get excited. There's lack of people that say that they're African is because they're trying to fit in with the Western culture instead of like, okay, embracing what they already have. So I think it's just hard.
Yeah, I kind of have a similar experience to what Geneva said about having the whole kind of identity where you are African, but you're at the same time you're in the U.S. So it's kind of like a split thing. Because so far, like my entire life, when you think of someone African, you don't really think of someone from Egypt, really. So it's kind of, I mean, by definition, I guess I am African, but you don't really consider someone from there African. And then again, back home, there's also kind of like a split identity of what you belong to, because there's a part of the country that's kind of more related to the Middle East, and then there's part of the country that identifies according to their religion. So I've always faced a lot of kind of different, a lot of different like kind of where do I belong kind of situations, and definitely being here as well kind of splits that apart even more, because being away from home for a couple of years kind of sets you apart from people who have been there like their entire life. Like, even though I've been at the country for like 4 years, I go back and I'm like seen as that one guy who kind of left and came back, so I'm not really considered part of the country anymore. It's very bizarre. So definitely, I do agree with Jenna that it's hard to kind of maintain an identity when you're so split apart in terms of geography and stuff.
I came here at Robert Williams Smith over 10 years ago. I have to say the culture on the campus have changed a lot in a very positive ways, even if we have a long way to go in terms of race and diversity. And when I came here, we were talking a lot about diversifying the faculty body. So I didn't experience the campus of Robert Williams Smith in Geneva as a less welcoming place. And, but I have to say that I felt sometimes out of place. Even today, I'm feeling that. because maybe we don't, because for the fact that we don't have so many faculty of color, I can interact with beyond my interaction with my friend, my white faculty friend. So sometimes I have that feeling of being out of place, and also I also have to say that as a professor of French, I don't look like a typical French professor. Actually, my name is not Pierre or David, and I always have to to accept my identity as a French professor. And then I have many publications, I always have to defend my credential. I have to show my credential to students. They are taking French 101. So, the post-evaluation, you have to deal with that also. And it's like you are always dealing with what I would call the stereotype threat. You have always been dealing with that. It's always also coming with, that's a different idea that is also connected to the stereotype threat. And whenever you, because you are African or you're black, whenever you raise your hands, you suppose to represent all black people, the sense of responsibility we're talking about. And sometimes, it's gratifying, but sometimes it's a really tricky situation to find yourself in, because you don't want to reinforce, if you don't want to reinforce the stereotype about black people, if you don't do it well. But if you do it, it's okay, it's black and it's different from the other black people. So you have so we're dealing with that constantly. So I think that's my experience.
All right, thank you. So next thing's maybe a little lighter note, I don't know, but kind of what are some misperceptions about your country that you think people usually have?
I could go more for the continent because I've never really heard any misconceptions on, like the best country ever. But yeah, I think one of the misconceptions I've heard about the whole continent of Africa is that every part of Africa is poor and everyone is dying. I'm like, no. And then another person, because I often introduce myself as African before American, they asked me, oh my gosh, you're from Africa. Do you wear clothes? Is this the clothes that you got from, in your home country? I'm like, no. So that's some of the misconceptions I've heard.
So I kind of have a lot of similar ones as well. I mean, obviously being from Egypt, a lot of people think that back home, essentially I live in a pyramid or ride around on a camel, which is kind of like a stereotype. But it is true, I've been asked that before. And I also have found the same questions that do you wear clothes back home? Is there a certain type of garb that you wear? So I've also gotten those types of questions as well. And definitely the whole idea of every part of it being poor, the fact that I come from a city Cairo, is that a little village or something? And it's pretty much bigger than New York City, so it's very interesting to hear the perceptions of how people think of Africa.
I would say being Ethiopian, there are a lot of very Ethiopian stereotypes and misperceptions. In the 80s, there was a very, very bad drought that led to an intense famine. So much so that there was concerts around the world that were devoted to raising money for this famine. So, the good intentions, but generations later, you have young Ethiopians carrying that brunt of having the stereotype levied on them. Poor, hungry. I think the first time I heard it, I was in middle school, and I went to an international school. And so these schools are, designed to promote diversity and inclusion and cultural awareness. And I was getting ready to go up on stage for a performance, and a fellow African, actually, South African student, turned to me and said, you're Ethiopian? He's like, you're not as skinny as other Ethiopians. Right, again, but this idea that we're all starving is definitely an Ethiopian misperception.
Yeah, I think it's that same idea. People thinking that if you're an African, you're here, you're an economic refugee. No, like people don't know that for some people it's a choice, and actually you do give up a lot. It's for many people it's a step down lifestyle, honestly. And so, but then you make the choice for different reasons, you know. Personally, because I have 5 children, all college graduates, all of them have graduate degrees, they're doing very well, and once the first one and the second one all chose to come to school here, we just didn't feel we could keep sending them here, and so we thought, let one person come. My husband is a dentist, and then, you know, I came first, then he came. So we're kind of here, but we have our home in Nigeria as well, and we go back every year. I haven't gone I didn't go last year because I went twice the year before, and I had 3 weddings, 3 of my children got married last year, so I couldn't go back. But having said that, it's those kinds of stereotypes and ideas, and yeah, it's the same thing, but people should wonder, if you are an international student and you studied abroad and you were not born here, then you actually have no access to any of the grants or anything. It's pretty expensive to pay international student fees anywhere in any of these places, and so yeah, you couldn't be really starving to be able to do that, and do that, you know. When you were young, you know, I can't even, what I love to do most is travel, so I keep checking off all the countries that I go to, and that's just a hobby. And scratch people, everybody's kind of the same under all of that. Everybody is ambitious for happiness. Everybody wants their family to be happy, I think. And everybody wants to be affirmed in the things that really matter, in the jobs that they do, in our type of job, in your research, in the things that you're able to do, and the young people that you're able to influence. I think for me that's kind of like the most important thing. But you know, you just have to deal with the other things, with the stereotypes. You can't go around explaining and saying, no, I'm not what you think, or you're wrong. You just roll with it, and it's not the #1 thing that is on the top of your consciousness. At least not mine, but I'm much older. So, and just have more experience with dealing with these things.
My favorite one is Africa is a country. Africa is a country, and we will add a country with a lot of violence, with disease, and you know, so we are trapped into those kind of stereotypes, because you know, the breaking news are all about negative news about Africa. So we are trapped into those kind of stereotypes, and those are phrases. And so we became the stereotypes and the phrase, negative phrases about Africa. So no wonder we have so many missionaries going there to save Africa, because those are people we need to save, from the suffering, from the disease. So I think those are the sad presentation of Africa, and the media don't want to criticize the media. They are contributing to expand to those kind of image of Africa. But it's our job to educate people about that. Beyond those kind of stereotypes and those negative images, you have a beautiful Africa, full of life and culture and richness. So.
I was just going to say, maybe when we finish it, each person can say one word that describes Africa in their mind, because I have my word, and then people can share.
I can say something really quickly. So, on the one hand, Africa is not a continent, right? And you clearly see 4 different countries represented here. But for many of us, and I'll speak personally, for me, I really do grasp this notion of being African, because there is a sense of a pan-African identity, right, that emerged post-colonialism, right, in this notion that there are shared struggles as Africans, right, that we all want a better continent for ourselves. So I just want to make that clear, that though you hear that, Africa is not a country, you will hear many of us say, yes, but I'm African. Yes, I'm Ethiopian, I'm Nigerian, but I'm African at the end of the day, because we believe in this notion of consciousness raising to improve the continent, and that our forefathers, who fought for colonialism, in many ways had this shared identity of Africa rising. So I just wanted to say that to clarify.
You want to say your word?
My word, when I think of Africa, I think happy.
When I think about Africa, I think about it as adventurous in a sense, because when you go to my country, even every part of Africa, my mom always says that she'd rather live back home, because once the day ends at 7 o'clock. Everybody's home, everybody can eat dinner, everyone could go to school, go to work, and come back. And then you still have, you're not tired, you can talk to your friends and whatnot. But in America, you have 24 hours, always work. So I like Africa because of that adventure, still being able to live a double life.
I guess my name would be an opportunity, just because I think Africa is a really underrated continent in terms of what's there, all the stereotypes about all negative things. And I think a lot of people forget that it's full of great things, and a lot of the continent has so much ahead of it in terms of advancement and natural resources and everything. There's so much potential there that it's very underrated. I think it's got has a bright future in front of it.
When I think of Africa, I see intensity of emotion, I see beauty, and colors, and music, and life. It's really life, living life in a very intense way, and enjoy life, and enjoy life, and the magic of life. Your interaction with, living your interaction with other human beings in a very, very deep way, and a continent of solidarity, where the individualism is not the primary goals for people. The interaction with the people is based on solidarity and shared identity, and so that's what I think I have in mind when I think about Africa.
Home, because I've been blessed enough to travel throughout the continent, and there hasn't been a country that I've been in where I haven't thought I could live here, right? And I think again it goes back to this feeling of being African and just feeling like I can connect, whether it's in Mozambique or in Tanzania or in the Ivory Coast. It's like we're the same. We have similar struggles. And it always feels right, regardless of where I've been. So I guess my word would be home.
All right. So I'll tell you my word. I'm sure most of you probably know, but my word will always be music. If you come to my dance class, I'm gonna shameless plug right here, so I'm just gonna do it right now. So tomorrow night at 8 p.m., Alejandro, we have some veterans in the room. My dance class is at 8 o'clock in the Bristol Fieldhouse. Geneva is her birthday tomorrow, so all the music in our class will be straight from the Ivory Coast. Not as good as Nigerian music, but just as bumping. But yeah, music is probably one of the biggest thing. I don't think there's a day there's not a day in my life that does not revolve around music, especially Nigerian music, but also music around the continent. Salome knows I jam out, I shower to Ethiopian music. I'm scrubbing and doing my little thing. So yeah, I would say music. So yeah, right now we have like a couple more a couple more minutes to like open up for the audience in case you have any questions that you're thinking of, that you're like, oh, I really want to ask them, that they may be beneficial. Does anyone have any questions for the panelists? Josiah?
So, how do you feel about the relationship between Africans born in Africa and African Americans?
That's a very, very good question. And it comes up all the time. I feel that when Africans and African Americans are together and is among another group of people, they tend to identify together, as black people. But when it's African Americans and Africans, there's this them and us thing too. Human beings just have a way of looking for things that separate them, rather than looking for things that hold people together. I feel that the relationship between the two communities is getting better, with better understanding of each other. I feel that at a point, people kept to their different corners of issues and were being judgmental of each other. But I feel now that just as a community, African American, together we are all facing some big challenges that is really dumb to be separating out in that way. And I'll say that the thing that just does it for me personally, you encounter any of my children, they don't have an accent like I do. They're African American like any African, and so it just doesn't make sense. And I think because at the levels of the adults and the professionals, there's the whatever communications and conversation has intensified in the recent past. So people actually talk and they're trying to deal with it. But from the African point of view, let me just tell you, Africans believe that any child is their child. And so that's just the culture. So when people are busy kind of trying to separate each other, they're not even thinking that. And that concept sometimes crosses racial barriers. So it's so natural for the African to, when they're talking among themselves, so to think that the African American person is their person as well. But then when it comes to struggling for resources and people feeling, some people came to come and do that or that before, oh no, you don't understand, you didn't have the same social experience, you people just come and do this and look at, that or that kind of thing. But it's when those things come that you have the opportunity to have a conversation. And I think it's getting better.
So as I said, both my parents are Ethiopian, and I'm not gonna lie, I think there's definitely a struggle with older generations of immigrants who have not experienced race. And so I think, I've been in conversations with my parents or like uncles and aunts who don't quite understand how racism functions, right? And so for me, my African identity is of course a Black identity. And to me, Black is diasporic. And in the Western context, I understand that to mean, I understand the ways in which that's perceived. But sometimes those are really difficult conversations to have with older members of my family who don't understand, right? Or who make judgments that are ignorant about African American communities and so on. And so I see that the younger generation, so I see first generation Ethiopian Americans, for instance, who have very stronger connections with African Americans or who understand concepts of race and racism in America, and the way and that our Ethiopian identity doesn't really matter to the white gaze, right? At the end of the day, you're black, you have some sort of color. And so I think at the younger generations, the relationships are stronger, and there's this understanding of a shared identity. But sometimes I think that disconnect doesn't, I think the disconnect sometimes intergenerationally, and at least that's been my experience.
For me, because my parents didn't, like Salome said, didn't experience race, so every time I would go to school, my parents would be like, stay away from those black kids. They always bring trouble. But then again, I went to a majority black school. So there was no way that I want to interact with them in that sense. So I think for my parents and it was like difficult to break the stereotypes in a sense, because I am black, and I'm technically the definition of African American, because I was born, I'm African, and then I came here, was born here. But then, like, my parents still haven't gotten that race is a thing in America, and they think that Africans are better. Yes, we're black, but Africans are better to them. So it's now, because I'm more educated and can talk more about it, it's hard to break them out of it because it goes into culture as well.
And to look at it on the other side, because I have so many friends who are African American as well, who are my age or older. The other side too kind of thinks the way you just said, on many levels and in many things. So it's both groups, kind of the older people who didn't grow up racialized, sometimes have difficulty getting it. On the African American side too, there's this concept of African kind of looking down on people too, thinking, oh, you know, all those people you see on TV, hungry, you know, compounding the stereotypes of. So both groups kind of feel that there are things on the other side that compounds the stereotypes of self that they're feeling, and kind of want to blame each other for it. But I feel that it's getting better because people are talking, and you're beginning to see second, third generation in the new wave of Africans. Because anyway, African Americans are Africans too. So in the research that I do, in the new wave of Africans, you're beginning to see people who are not first generation, who are probably second, and it's all about conversation. And I think it crosses race too, and it's a problem on this campus as well. Like we're doing this, it's the same people that I see in everything that I'm seeing here, just a handful of people. And when we're talking diversity and inclusion, you come, majority of the people is the same group of Caucasian people, and then majority will be black and brown people talking to each other and convincing each other about being inclusive. It's useless until the conversation is had with everybody, properly mixed. What are you including if you're talking to the same people? You're all belonging in the same group. It's whose mind are you changing? Whose perspective are you broadening? Whose cognitive map are you enlarging? Nothing. It's just talking. So until we are able to do something to just make the groups that talk about these issues representative of the population of the campus, where we all learn about each other in a non-judgmental way, we will just be struggling. And since I have the microphone, and I'll say that conversations are not useless. They need to be had, but they need to be purposeful, and they need to be had with the right people in the correct environment. I think that's a challenge for all of us that we really need to meet. I don't think we take enough time to get to know each other, and that's a problem.
CJ?
My question was, so I have one of my best friends from Ghana, who's West African.
Yes, you're right.
And Egypt, which is North African, South African. How does all that all come together with different
Should I? Can I?
Yeah.
I don't want to monopolize. So, as with all diasporic groups of people, it's not just Africans. When people move from their native places and they go someplace else, the margins and the definition of the us widens to include as many people as similar. Even on this campus, people see people talk, we're from New York, we're from Chicago, we're from this, then it becomes we're from the South, we're from the North, we're from the East Coast, West Coast. So Africans are no different. So when you are not on the continent, every African becomes like a brother. And it's still like the concept of home. The concept of home is actually ambulatory, it moves with people. I think the permanent sense of home is probably the one that is your natal home. But as you move from place to place, the definition of home changes. So if I meet a Nigerian, or if any of my colleagues here, I say to Alejandra, I'm going home tomorrow, because I'm in Geneva. Home, you would think I'm going to Kentucky, that's home, that husband is there, that's where. If I'm in Kentucky, I'm among a group of Nigerians, we're at a party, and I say, I'll be going home next month. They're here, I'm going to Nigeria next month. If I'm in Nigeria and I'm in Lagos, and I say, I need to go home. They're hearing that I'm going home to my little home. And so the concept of home is actually moves with the person, depending on where you're located. And along with that concept of home, the concept of who belongs, whose family is together, also changes based on context. So when Africans are in America, or in Europe, or outside the continent, they're brothers and sisters. And there are such fundamental commonalities in the worldview anyway, whether you speak the language or not, in the African worldview that makes you comfortable to an extent wherever you land on the continent. But it's what it is. It's like that for you too, when you think about it, the concept of home. And if all of you go and study abroad, all of you in this room, go to study abroad in Australia or something. While you're there, all of you from HWS suddenly become one family. It's the other people that are them. It becomes an us. It's when you come back here on campus that other little things start separating you. But when you are out there and you're encountering that new experience together, it becomes, you become a group together. And so that's kind of how I think I experience these things and how many people do. So we're so many countries in Africa, but we still see ourselves as Africans because of those the shared cultural, norms. And that fact that you must respect your elders, it's common to all African. I'll give an example. For instance, on this campus, I know that the students who call me Titi are the ones who are familiar with me and they're doing it out of familiarity and affection. But I always cringe because in my culture, you just don't do it. You can't call somebody who can be your mom by their first name, like just a no-no. But I know it's coming from a good place, and so I hesitate to say, don't do it, I don't like it, because I don't want to put a barrier between me and the students who do it out of affection, but I'm not comfortable with it. So that's, you understand this, but I don't think I'll need to explain it to any African. They already know, I don't have to.
And to kind of piggyback off of that, I would say that when we talk about the culture, and that is a very strong thing. I will tell you, writing the profile, so I've never called you by your friend, you know that, but I even hesitated writing your name on this, that I almost emailed you saying, should I just put Provost for my time here? Because I didn't want to, for me it was a kind of a respect thing that I hear people call her by her first name and I'm like, oh, what are you doing? But I know I would never, I would never in my life would I ever call her by her first name. I always will say probo, so I'll kneel down. A lot of things that in our culture we kneel down. So every time I say, I'm just like, good afternoon, good morning, because that's just what I do. And I could only imagine, not that she would beat me or hit me, but I can only imagine if I was disrespectful of the things that will come. So.
Now you also know that we become mom to all children that we love and encounter.
Mm-hmm.
So I will just talk to you like your mom. And I know how to do that very well.
I think for me it was different because I was always told that North Africa was different from everything else because of race. And everyone from like West, East, and South Africa, and we look more alike. We are more, like we can relate more. Whereas like in American census, North Africa is not Black, it's not African. So it's like coming to America and learning all of that, it like taught me that I was different and that we would never get together because of that census. Because if you don't consider yourself Black and you already have the westernized like views and whatnot, you're gonna always make me feel inferior and stuff like that. So I think growing up, I learned that North Africa and everything else was different.
Magdi?
Definitely, if you agree with Geneva, definitely that kind of sense of not being different is there, even for people in North Africa. Like, you don't really, unfortunately, like, as a kid growing up in, like, going through middle school and elementary school, whenever they kind of teach you history, they never really associate Egypt or, I'm assuming, any other part of North Africa with Africa. They really kind of push it more towards the Middle East, and even then, it depends on like what your religious kind of your religion is. If you're Muslim, you're probably gonna identify with them, but there's a significant minority of Christians. I'm one of them. That kind of culture doesn't really kind of fit me personally, so I'm kind of at that boundary. And the funny thing is, when I didn't really feel connected to like the rest of that, and I'm not. What Pro Supermada said definitely about kind of being away from home and kind of seeing others away from home, you identify with them and you kind of feel like you belong with them more than others. Like the first year I left home, I felt more connected to the international students, and especially the ones from Africa, because I felt we had a lot of similar cultural things, especially calling elders calling adults by their first names. That's not something I do. And I remember a situation where I was in an English class, and our teacher said to call it my first name. And I felt very bizarre the first time I heard that, and it just didn't sit well with me. And I guess I got used to it, but still now, if I see someone from that part of the world, I definitely wouldn't do that. But yeah, definitely North Africa, unfortunately, there is a difference because of skin tone, maybe in culture is a bit different as well. But at the same time, I think in the future, there might be, like that gap will be bridged. I'm hoping that's the case with a lot of the new African leaders in all these new countries. I know for my president, he's trying to kind of do a lot of collaborations with a lot of other African countries. I know he's trying to collaborate with Sudan, and he's trying to do other things as well. So I'm hoping that that gap is bridged, but it definitely is there right now.
In Africa, let's say in Mauritania, in Egypt, in Uganda or Gambia, we are lucky enough to have people I call cultural agents who are really trying to make connection with different African countries, making connection across our differences. Because we have, beyond our specificities, our specific identities, African identities, and so we talk about the shared identity, and we probably talk about the common identity, commonalities between Africans, the common experience. So we're lucky enough to have different places in Africa, different countries in Africa, in Maghreb, in North Africa, in West Africa, in East Africa. We're lucky enough to have some cultural agents who are really trying to bridge our differences in order to build common identities without destroying our specificities, and That's very important because that's also the richness of our culture. And you have the same, you also have the same process going on in the United States, where African Americans, Africans living in the United States trying to forge connection across our differences, because I know for a fact that we have a lot of misconception and misunderstanding about each other, African about African American, African American about Africans. So, but we're really trying to go beyond those misconceptions, construct, a kind of, to negotiate our different relationships, beyond our differences. Back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, we were talking about Pan-Africanism, and Solomon mentioned Pan-Africanism. And the Pan-Africanists in the United States and Africa were really trying to connect Africa with the United States. But today, I have to say that we don't feel the same kind of energy. The Pan-Africanism is still going on. But the new generation have to develop new strategies to connect Africa with the United States. I was in Senegal in summer, and I met many African Americans in Senegal, because we went there, to discover the culture, to make connection with their motherland. Also have many Africans coming here in order to build a bridge between African Americans and Africans. So it's a working process, but we really have to be able to go beyond our misconception about each other. So it's a work in progress.
All right, so we have time for one more question. Going once, going twice. All right. So next, I'll bring to stage Alana. I will say your name wrong. I'm so sorry.
No, Alana's right.
Okay, good. Some of them like Elena, Jefferson Tate. Okay, so Alana to the stage from Africana Studies.
Hi. So first I want to say that I'm just really excited to be here, and I'm excited that this conversation is happening. I think it's so important. And I'm really excited that Joshua invited me to speak. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to say at the closing, but I am really proud to be a part of this. And sort of connecting with this sort of piece of identity in terms of sort of culturally and where I was born. I'm definitely African American, but as a African American, I also have always identified as African. My ancestry has always been central to who I am as a African American person. And also I identify as Afro-Caribbean. My father's side is from Guyana. So I think there are many of us who have these sort of multiple identities that we navigate. So I want to close with just a few very brief words for this wonderful discussion. Experiencing Africa does not require a trip abroad or a cross-continent adventure into the foreign and the exotic. Africa is a part of the very fabric of America. Africa is as familiar to being American as the American flag and the Pledge of Allegiance. Not only are contemporary African peoples and their descendants from countries such as Ghana, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, South Africa, Somalia, and Libya are doctors, nurses, scientists, professors, and friends, but moreover, this geopolitical space we call America was literally built and birthed by African peoples. The Igbo peoples of present-day Nigeria, the Bambara of present-day Senegal and Gambia, the Mende peoples of present-day Sierra Leone, the Akan of present-day Ghana, and the Ebe, Fon, and Yoruba of present-day Ghana, Togo, Benin, and Nigeria. African immigrant peoples and communities, whether forcibly brought to these lands in chains or traveling in search of opportunities, have brought with them their knowledge and wisdom, culture and religions, and technologies and science. Put in this light,